Hi guys. Hey, we're doing a lab today, and today the lab is with breeding bunnies. And as much fun as it would be to work with all those cool little snowshoe hares outside your window or your pet bunnies that many of you have, today we're gonna just pretend and we're gonna do a model with breeding bunnies and do a sort of simulation. And so there's some equipment that you're gonna need for this, and I want to let you know what this equipment is. So first off, if we were in class, we would be doing this with beans. And you recognize these guys. Those are those black beans that we used to grow in our bean experiment early in the year. But I need two kinds, and I want these to be as similar as possible, but different colors so I can tell them apart. So here I would use like black beans and white beans, and they're the same size and they're the same texture. So I could randomly choose them. And not be able to tell the difference with my eyes closed, but then when I look at them, I could tell the difference between black and white. Okay, so you want something like that. Now, if you don't have beans at home, maybe you have like some game pieces. Maybe you have some like Lego pieces you could use. You're going to need 25 of the two different colors. Okay, so whatever color they are. Maybe you have like, oh, I love these. Like maybe you have poker chips. Poker chips are pretty fun to use. Can you see these poker chips? Poker chips would be really awesome. Again, you would need 25 of the two different colors, okay? Or maybe you want to use toothpicks, kind of like our toothpick fish. Those would work out well. And you want two different colors. Now, if you don't have these cool little party picks with the different colors, you could use regular toothpicks and color some of them, 25 of them, and then have 25 that aren't colored. So anything would work out as long as you have 25 of one and 25 of the other, and you can randomly choose to put them together. Because what these are going to represent is they're going to represent alleles. Remember alleles when we did that genetics unit? Alleles are the different forms of the genes. And that lets you know about something else that you'll need. You'll need a bowl that we're going to call the breeding grounds, because what we're going to end up doing is putting all these beans or whatever you choose into the breeding grounds to let those genes mix in the gene pool. And we have the different alleles. We have the white and the black beans in here. And then we're going to randomly pick two to find out what genes get passed along to that offspring. We're also going to need another bowl that's going to be the graveyard, because not everybody's going to make it. Okay. And then you also need this thing we're calling the breeding placemat. Now, to get that, what I want you to do is you're going to go to down on the Canvas page. You go down and read all this information. It helps a little bit. There's a link to the directions. I'm going to talk through those a little bit, but they're also there. And then if you click on this breeding or bunny breeding placemat and data table, it's going to ask you to make a copy, and it always helps to have your Google Docs or Google Drive open first, but then do make a copy. And what you will see is up will come this breeding placemat, but also if you scroll down, you will see this also includes a data table that's helpful to print out so that you can write down your data as you get it. Okay, so it's nice to have a printout of that. If you don't have a printer, it's not a big deal. You can do it just by hand. I also want to point out this Breeding Bunny student spreadsheet while we're here. And if you click on that, again, you'll need to make a copy. And what you'll see, it's a spreadsheet. Now, people have been doing really well with those group spreadsheets. This one's a little different, though. This is going to be your own spreadsheet. You're going to put your own data in here. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, but you will see that this spreadsheet is going to have a data table where you enter your data. It's going to do some calculations for you, which is what's really cool about spreadsheets. They can do a lot of math for you really quick. And it's even going to make some graphs for you so that you can use to analyze your data. And this is going to be where your questions are going to be answered. And so this spreadsheet itself will be submitted in the Canvas document. That will be what you're submitting at the end of the lab today. So let me give you a few instructions here on how this lab is going to work. So you're going to start with your 25 beans or 25, whatever they are, in the breeding grounds. Okay, now let me tell you a little bit about the backstory here with these bunnies. So here were these 25 bunnies, and someone was raising these bunnies. They had a very good life. They were very well taken care of. They were protected from predators. They had plenty of food. They survived very well. And because bunnies are vertebrates, they reproduce sexually and they have variation among their offspring. Not all the offspring are the same, and they carry different genes. As you know, that we mostly have two copies of every gene, and sometimes those genes are not exactly alike. They could be different alleles. And so our bunnies can pass on these different alleles. And so we are going to represent those alleles with these beans in our breeding grounds. Now, the bunnies that we have been really well protected for many, many, many generations. But then during this little experiment, this weird researcher releases these bunnies onto this wild island. Now, you would never ever want to really do this because it's both bad for the bunnies and it's bad for the environment. But they release these 25 bunnies onto this island and they watch over the generations to see what's going to happen. So we're going to simulate that with this model. So our bunnies are on the island and they're reproducing. And so they're mixing their genes together. And we're going to find out what their young look like by randomly selecting two of these. So I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to pick two and I see what I get. Oh, and I got a black bean and a white bean. Now, this is where the placemat comes in. I'm going to make this so you can see it all a little bit better, hopefully. And so here, I got a black and a white, and the black represents the big F, and the white represents the little f. And the big F stands for thick fur, and the little f stands for thin fur. And so heterozygous, genotype, one of each, I'm going to put that in the big F, little f. Now, I'm going to keep doing this. And I should get 25 baby bunnies. And I got two whites, that's two little F's, so I'm going to put it there. And, oh, I got two whites again. I'm going to put it there. And I got black and whites. I'm going to put it there. And I'm just going to keep this process going without losing any beans like that. Oh, and I got two of those. So I'm going to put it there. And eventually, I'm going to end up with 25 different bunnies. Now I'm going to pause. So you might end up with something that looks like this. Now, once I have all my bunnies, I've got my big F, I've got my big F, little f, and I've got my little f, then I'm going to take that data table and I'm going to record what I have for generation 1. And I'm going to count up how many big F I have. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would write 5 right here. I have 15 big F, and I have 5 little f. So I record that information here, and then I also record the number of alleles. Now here it's pretty easy because we started out with 25 whites and 25 blacks, and so if you count them all up, you would have 25 and 25. But it's not always going to be 25 and 25 because what happens from here is, well, all these baby bunnies, they don't necessarily make it. I hate to tell you, but it's a rough, cruel world out there, and in this habitat where it's really cold, these bunnies that have this really fine fur, they don't survive long enough to reproduce. They die off. And so their alleles go into the graveyard. Sorry, little bunnies. However, the rest of the bunnies, they live happily and have a good life, and they end up let me just get those out of the way. They end up reproducing. So all of these then go back into the breeding grounds. Now what you'll notice is we don't have 25 of each because there's some that are in the graveyard. So these ones in the graveyard, they are out of it for now. Okay, we're not going to use them in part 1. They will come again in part 2, so we don't want to get rid of them completely. But we're going to keep going with this. We're going to breed another generation. As you noticed on the sheet, we have 5 generations. So now we're going to do a whole nother generation, and we're going to go back and do that same thing that we just did with our beans here. And we're going to pick out of the breeding ground what we've got. Sorry. And we got 2 white ones, etc. Oh, another 2 white. Interesting. Oh, there's a black and a white. And we keep going. And we're going to write our data here. Okay? Now, once that data is collected, each time for part 1, the ones with thin fur, they go into the graveyard, and we continue until we have the next generation. And then what we do is we go to part 2. And for part 2, it's the same thing, except these bunnies are going to a different island. And this island is a warm island. So we're going to put all of our beans back together. Take all those ones from the graveyard, put them back together so that we have 25 and 25, white and black. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start basically all over again, doing the same thing. Where's our beans? We're going to breed our bunnies and see what we get. And okay, I got a black and a white, and big F, little f, and I got a little f, and I got a big F, and I got a big F, little f. And we keep this going the whole way for part 2, and we fill it in for generation 1 of part 2. And then we read part 2 and we say, oh, it's a warm island. And it turns out that those bunnies with thick fur, they don't survive very well. So it's the ones that have the big F gene, the big F. Oh, now these guys go into the graveyard. And what about the big F, little f? Oh, big F is dominant. And so these guys also have thick fur, so they also go into the graveyard. And who gets passed on to continue to be able to breed is only those little f's. So you're going to continue this for the 5 generations in part 2. Now, on your data sheet, you'll see you can fill in part 1 and part 2. There's this gray part over here. Don't worry about that right now. I'm going to show you how that all works. Once you've collected all your data, you're going to go back to that spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet will look like, once you've done it, where'd it go? Copy of, that's this one. Will look like this, and you're going to enter your data. Now, what you'll see is right here, it looks really weird. That's because there's no numbers in there yet. But I have an example here that has a few numbers. So once you put your numbers in, it's going to look like this. And what you'll see is over here, there's some calculations that have been done. And these calculations are the frequency of the different alleles. So this is the frequency of the big F allele, the thick fur, and this is the frequency of the little f. And these frequencies are basically like percent, but it's as a decimal. Okay, so if all of them were big F, it would be 1.0. If half of them were a big F, it'd be 0.5. And that's what we start with. Half big F, half little f, 0.5, 0.5. But what you see is it changes over time. Now these, over the generations. Now these numbers might be hard to understand, and that's where a graph comes in. And what you'll notice, this is so cool, is when you put those numbers in there, ooh, the spreadsheet makes you a graph right here. And so you can see what happened to the frequency of the different genes, the different alleles over those generations. And for me, the blue here is the big F, and the red is the little f. And so you can see what happened to that frequency, and you might think about that. Now, you're also going to have part 2, and you'll get the numbers for part 2, and you'll have a graph for part 2 in the hotter climate. Now, once you get those, that will help you to analyze the data so that you can answer these 5 conclusion questions. Now, you're going to type your answers right in here to the questions, and then this is going to be submitted. So when you submit your assignment at the end of the lab, you're going to submit that sheet itself. You're going to submit that copy of that Google sheet that you made, and it will be all complete. So, should be pretty fun, should be pretty cool. Please call me if you have any questions. I think at 1 o'clock on Friday, I will also have an open Zoom. Anyone that wants to do the lab together, we can do that. Hope it all works out. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Should be fun, and think about that natural selection as you do it. Okay, have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.